You're listening to the Gutsy Podcast, where we talk about all things real, raw, and ridiculous about running a business authentically. I'm Laura Wallace, also known as the Laura Aura, lover of all things inspirational, owner of Works Graphic Design, and your host on this journey through entrepreneurship. I'm here to help you get out of your head and back into action as a passionate business rock star. Tune in every Tuesday and Thursday as we fuel your gutsy. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Guys, there are 100 million different social media platform businesses that we can build our business. And what a time that we live in right now, that in an instant, someone across the neighborhood, across the world can know who we are and what we do. I'm so excited today because we're going to talk about Instagram. Instagram happens to be my platform of choice. I love that you get all the visual goodness and not all the extra junk that comes along with some of the other sites. So I'm particularly excited because today we have Allie, Dattilio. She's an oil painter and mixed media artist. She happens to be just down the hall from us, so we are fortunate to get to see her on a regular basis. And she's widely known for her signature 24K gold leaf landscapes. Guys, these things are insanely gorgeous. She makes them out of her studio here in Hagerstown, Maryland. She graduated from St. Mary's College in Maryland in 2011 with a Bachelor of Arts in Art and History and a minor in mathematics, which I definitely want to talk about that. She's got this mix of creative and analytical, and it shaped her into a type A artist who thrives off of challenging on both sides of her brain, pushing the limits of her palette and paintbrush and exploring strategy now as a small business owner. When she's not in her studio, she can be found blowing raspberries into her baby scrumptious belly, tending to her family's organic garlic garden, and hanging out with her husband, Mark, and slowly remodeling and their fixer-upper and designing their forever home. Allie, thank you so much for joining me
today.
Was
a lot. Yeah, thanks.
I know. Yeah. So much awesomeness. I mean, we can't not talk about all the awesome things that you've done. So first I need to talk about, okay, we have a left brain and we have a right brain.
Yeah.
You function, it sounds like, very fluently on both. So tell me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so that's been kind of something I've had my entire life and something I've just really leaned in on. I think I'm a talented artist. I can see something and paint it, and I think I'm pretty good at that, but I'm equally kind of frustrated by the arbitrariness of art sometimes. So I really kind of found myself attracted to math, just the black and white, like 2 + 2 = 4, yes or no. So I liked the structure there and the challenges in the business. So majored in art, minored in math, worked a little bit in accounting, which also I think prepared me well as a small business owner and getting to see the insides of businesses and how they function. And for me, I like ebbing and flowing between the two worlds. It's never boring for sure. So
I'm certain of that, especially with a little guy and a growing family.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we didn't mention, I have an 18-month-old named Ward, and then expecting twins, newly expecting twins. So they'll be coming the end of 2019, early 2020. Yeah, we'll see.
So exciting. So many wonderful things in your life. So I think one of the most interesting parts about the entrepreneurial story is the story. So tell me a little bit about what led you up to starting your business, your studio here in Hagerstown.
Yeah, so initially I graduated from St. Mary's College in Maryland. That's down in Southern Maryland. So after we graduated, we lived down there for a few years. We lived in Leonardtown, Maryland, a tiny town. There was a little bit of an artist community, but very limited. And so I was always kind of prioritizing my art right out of college. I worked in a gallery part-time, and then I was painting part-time. So I just knew that if I got sucked into kind of corporate world full-time, it'd be really hard to get out. So I made the conscious decision, which was difficult because I'm also very competitive and I want to climb that ladder. But I made the decision to find positions that would allow me to work part-time and then paint part-time. So I did that for a couple of years down in Southern Maryland. And that was kind of where I recognized, though, I needed to get online because my ideal client was not in this small town. And then moving back home to Hagerstown, again, the art market, I think it's growing, but it's not quite my ideal. Not my biggest buyers are here. So it's, then tapping into like, okay, how do I find those right buyers and the bigger potential and kind of the limitless potential that the internet has. So initially, this was right out of college before Instagram was even a thing. I got kind of into the blogging world and tapped into interior design blogs. At that time you could connect with them, and for like a $30 post, they would feature your work, which was kind of my ideal clientele, getting my work out in front of the right people. So that's where I started, from blogging. Then Pinterest kind of came into the picture. And then, this amazing little thing Instagram came along. I had a BlackBerry for probably way too long. So I remember like at one point I was like, I need to get an iPhone just so I can get Instagram. Because at that point, it was only an Apple thing. So I think I started on Instagram maybe about around 2013, but I would say I got really intentional and strategic with it about 2015. And that's where I saw kind of the biggest momentum and kind of snowball from there. Yeah.
Awesome. So making the leap, I think one of the challenges that a lot of people have is exposing themselves, right? So putting yourself out there. There's a lot of mental chatter that comes along with, oh, I'm conceited and look at me. And especially if you want to put yourself forward, then that brings on a whole nother level. So tell me a little bit about, did you go through any challenges of putting yourself and your artwork and saying, hey, look at me, look what I can do for you?
Yeah, for me, I don't think I struggled with that too much, only because I was so into that whole blog world where it was like outfit of the day. And like, that was so normal for me. And I didn't go quite that far, but I was familiar with it enough, knowing like, this is what I needed to do. I needed to put myself out there personally, just as much as my work. I went the gallery route for a little bit, selling my work in a gallery, which is a little bit safer because you can hide behind that a bit. It's not so much about you. It really is about your work. But with that comes a 50% commission cut. So I was also seeing my profits really dwindle. So that's just standard. They take 50%. And I just recognized that if I could get comfortable putting myself out there, selling directly to the consumer, I could be a lot more profitable. I'd have to paint a lot less, sell a lot less to be able to make a lot more money. So that was, I think, really the ultimate push, just getting over that hurdle. And also recognizing, like, for me, it wasn't so much, I'm comfortable putting myself out there. I'm not so comfortable selling. I think that's where I get a little, like, I don't want to just sell a product. So even in my current approach with Instagram, it's really just sharing my story, sharing my process, sharing my pieces, intentionally getting my audience interested and hooked on the work I'm doing. But then very strategically selling in very specific moments, not all the time, serving my audience, providing them really great content, and then selling. But it's not about just the sales. So.
Okay. So I think that's a really interesting concept. I'd like to dig into that a little bit more. So you said not always selling, but selling in periods of time. So is that part of your business strategy? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So that is my strategy. It's evolved a little bit over the years, but I do my biggest sales are these seasonal collections that I release quarterly. So I have 4 big collections. So that kind of is that ebb and flow of my process, where I have a season of creating and it's that build up, and then I have a launch, and I launch it. And then currently my pieces are selling out usually within like the day or a weekend, which is really incredible. But it's all about building that anticipation and sharing that process and getting them to engage and buy into it, so that then in that one moment that I am ready to sell, they're ready to buy.
So tell me a little bit about then your strategy leading up to that moment. So, I'm sure there are things happening on Instagram prior to when you say, hey, it's live, everyone's basically beating down the Instagram doors to get to it. So what's that look like?
So for me, it's a lot of anticipation. I usually start about 6 weeks out. I'll set my date. I'll announce my date. Every collection has usually a theme. I'll title it with a hashtag so they can follow along. My last collection was called the petrichor paintings. Petrichor is, I learned a new term, but it's the aroma of earth after like the first rain of a season. And my pieces are usually very stormy and moody, so it worked. But that was my hashtag, the petrichor painting. So it's announcing it, then sharing my process. Literally, I do time-lapse videos, especially on Instagram. Being an artist, it's really the perfect platform because it is so visual. So time-lapse videos of me working and painting tend to go kind of viral almost and really catch on. So I'll share my process working, detail shots, also sharing kind of my inspiration in my captions and sharing kind of where my heart is, and just creating elements that my potential buyers can connect to. and resonate with. And I think sometimes art can be a little intimidating. So it's really just making it approachable for them, and something that they really must have.
So it's a lot. I mean, I'm hearing storytelling is really, that's what's selling the piece. Ultimately, by the time they see the final piece, you see the collection, they already know that they want it or one of them. They don't, maybe they don't even know which one. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, sometimes people have very specific ones they want and then get very upset when they sell out before they but yeah, no, it's all about storytelling. It's really just laying that groundwork. So the hard work's already done for you. Then it's just putting it out there and they're already ready to buy. So.
Wow. One thing I love about your feed is, and we're going to talk about that also, but that there's a commonality, right? So on Instagram, one of the key things is to have a brand, right? A brand essence. So how do you maintain your imagery, your feed, how all those things look with the lighting and the textures and the colors? And that's I think one of the biggest things that people struggle with is, I know what I want it to do, but I can't get the right filter to do what I want it to do.
Right. Well, I think that is so important, that consistency, and so that the moment someone lands on your page, sees your grid, in that moment, they know who you are, what you're about, what kind of work you do, and whether or not they want to stick around. They're going to decide in just this few seconds. So I am very intentional. I mean, even within my work, I'm intentional to have a very signature style so it's recognizable. So they see a piece with my gold leaf landscapes and they know that's an Allie Dattilio painting. So that's been something I've been working towards, really niching out something that's unique for me and that sets me apart. So having that signature artwork, then that's consistent throughout, that kind of makes it a little bit easier. I actually don't use any filters or anything for my images. And I usually just use my iPhone for pictures, but I do brighten them up. I love the bright whites. I think that bright white contrast against the artwork really helps them pop. So I will sometimes do a little editing if it's for my paintings. I'll do a little editing in Photoshop just to color balance, just to get that white background really white, to make sure there's no kind of color cast or anything. And then on my feed, it's easy to be consistent because I know that white is going to be consistent throughout all of my images and kind of tie everything together. And then I work with a very similar color palette with the golds and the grays and the blues that keep it consistent. So visually I'm consistent. I'm also thinking about kind of my voice and my captions and how I'm writing on Instagram. I think sometimes people overthink this, but I just try to stay true to myself and to write like I talk. And I think the more honest you are, the more consistent you'll be. Don't try to be someone you're not, just be who you are, and that'll come through then, and also build that brand just from your personality. And I think also the consistency, just showing up regularly. I think people can get a little frustrated when they don't immediately see that growth, and Instagram's kind of fighting against you these days with the algorithm. But if you just keep showing up, putting in the work, you will see results eventually.
So that leads me right into one of my questions that I want to ask you. So I just pulled up my phone to glance at your page quick. So you're over 23,000 followers. So I know the name of the game on Instagram is how do I get more followers? And there's you can buy people, and you can do all these things. How on earth do you get to 23,000 followers that are quality followers?
Right. So it's been playing the long game. I've been, I think it's probably been about 4 years that I really have been strategic and intentional in putting in the work and making sure I am posting quality images. But I think a big part of that is recognizing your ideal clients and where they're spending their time on Instagram. We can get into it, but we have hashtag strategies too. So thinking about, not just what your ideal client's going to be searching for. So I think though, not just the type of painting I'm making, but even just the lifestyle that they're living. So I use a lot of hashtags for like Coastal Living Magazine or Southern Living, really where I see my paintings living and whose home is that? And then who is that person and where are they spending their time? Where are they spending their money? What other accounts are they following? So showing up on similar accounts that I know they're going to also be spending time and really just engaging, building friends. And similar to real life, Instagram's all about networking too, and making those relationships and sharing other accounts and celebrating other artists or other interior designers, so that hopefully they'll shout you out too. And usually that does work. And you're just building those kind of friendships and connections that way too.
Would you say, was there a moment in time or a scenario that you can remember where you looked at your phone one day and you're all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, where did all these people come from? And what was a turning point that increased your following and your fan base online?
Yeah, so there's a few moments I can pinpoint. One, Framebridge. This was a few like years ago when Framebridge was just starting out. They're based out of Maryland. So that at the time they've moved, I think, but at the time they were a local company. And I had gotten one of their frames and framed one of my watercolors in their frame and just posted a picture and tagged them in it. They shared that picture. Then they like contacted me to do a blog interview. And then they like bought a few of my pieces and had them in their offices, all from just tagging them on a picture.
Wow.
And so from that kind of gave me a little boost. I was also featured on a few kind of art feature accounts. Some you have to pay for. I have not paid. Well, I paid for one years ago for about $25, and I did get a couple hundred followers from that. I don't totally recommend that though, because those followers were other artists, not so much art buyers. So thinking now that was kind of a lesson learned after the fact, recognizing artists are not necessarily my ideal clients. So we had the Framebridge moments, and then really just working with other interior designers, getting my pieces in interiors and putting my work in context to give this whole, not the illusion, but just telling the story of the lifestyle that these people are living. And, if you have one of my paintings, this is how your life's going to look, kind of thing. So that's been crucial.
Wow. So you mentioned hashtag and hashtag strategy. I know you sometimes see one funny hashtag on one person's post and then like 30 on someone else's. So tell me a little bit about your hashtag strategy. What works, what doesn't work?
Yeah. So my strategy, you are allowed up to 30 hashtags on each post in your feed. So I use all 30. I will though post them in as like a second comment separate from my initial caption, just so it doesn't really clutter things up. And then I have sets of hashtags. I have about 3 or 4 different groups of 30 hashtags that are relevant towards the type of image I'm posting. So if it's a time-lapse process of me painting, I will have a little bit more specific to art hashtags. If it's an image of my work in an interior, then it's going to be a little bit more targeted towards interior design hashtags, really just keeping it relevant. And those groups I just keep in my notes app on my phone, so I can just cut and paste. I don't have to think about it each time. They're just ready to go. I'm also now getting a little bit more into hashtags on stories, which is a relatively new addition. But I think there's potential there. I think on stories, you're allowed up to 15 hashtags. So exploring that possibility, that potential also. So setting up your groups and just having it set ahead of time so you're not in the moment trying to come up with 30 unique hashtags.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of us stall is, I have to say, hashtag that. And then you forget, and then you're like, oh, I forgot this one. Have you found, I know at one point, and the rules always change online.
Right.
Do you find that you have any issues with algorithm or any issues with having the same hashtags in the same order on posts?
I have not, and I will use the same hashtags pretty frequently. And I have not seen a difference. I think even with the algorithm, it's really just coming down to the quality of the content that you're posting above anything else. That's really going to determine the success. Then posting it and not letting it just kind of die out there, continue to engaging, respond to any comments that are coming through, just keeping it active and keeping it fresh. I think that definitely helps your chances in the algorithm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So content is king. We've touched on that a handful of times. So talk to me a little bit about your content strategy.
Yeah. So as an artist, I think it's a little unique, but my strategy is I actually kind of created this grid. I don't really follow it that intensely, but I've come up with this formula where I will post, I want a picture of myself in at least one of the first 9 images. I think that's really powerful just to be present and relevant. And just so in that moment when they're checking your feed, they get really quickly who you are. So making sure that you're in one of those first 9 images. Then I'll do a few progress pictures. And then I'll usually have one final image of my work as a post. And then one personal post that could be a little bit more maybe about my inspiration, a photograph of a landscape that I'm inspired by, or an interior that I'm inspired by. Interior designers are a really big ideal market for me because they can connect me with clients that may not otherwise discover me. So I'm constantly thinking about how to reach them, and also how to reach the people that would be following them. So that's strategic. So yeah, I really focus on the artwork. Also, we'll have some detailed shots of my studio space, really setting the tone for this life that I'm living and the experience of creating this artwork and the spaces that I'm inhabiting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that you're also really phenomenal on your stories. So talk to me a little bit about Instagram stories and what goes into that and the planning and the time that's involved and how it works for you.
So really, I mean, I think really on all the internet, but video content is where everything's headed. YouTube's becoming quickly like the largest, right behind Google, the largest search engine. So video content is really important. If you also just consider how you're consuming content on Instagram, I think it's a lot easier to get sucked into the stories and just keep swiping through than scrolling a feed. So I think a lot of emphasis is being put towards stories. Instagram, I think, is also favoring stories and video content, whether it's the IGTV, which is one thing I've not yet gone into, just don't have the bandwidth for totally yet, but also live videos and then your stories. So I think lately I've been putting more focus on my stories. Whereas for my feed, I'm posting a little bit less. I think before everyone would say post once a day in your feed, that's mandatory. Now I'm kind of cutting back a little bit more, 3 to 4 times, maybe 4 to 5 times a week in the feed, but making sure I'm showing up in my stories every day. They say in your stories posts have dashes, not dots. So when you're looking at the top of your stories, don't bombard them with 100 little dots. My goal is to usually have about between like 4 and 8 stories a day. And then because people aren't engaging in the feed as much, it's a little bit more difficult to get those comments engagement. But in stories, they have really fun, those little features like the polling or the questions. And those little fun features are much easier to get engagement that way. It's easier for someone just to tap yes or no than expect a full comment. So that's where I try to have a little bit more fun and getting that engagement. Because again, if you can get one of your followers or someone to engage in that story, then the algorithm is going to remember that they're interested in what you have to say and favor you and make sure that your work and your content's being seen. So I love those little poll features. And then being engaging, posting questions. I think stories are also the place to be a little less refined. It's more the behind the scenes look, being a little bit more personal. So that's also where I will show more pictures of my family. I don't post many pictures of my son or my husband in my feed, but that's where they'll show up in the stories just to really get like a truer sense of what my life is like. Again, also showing process pictures and videos of my time lapse. But I think everyone should be spending more time in their stories and also having fun with it. I think that's really the purpose of it. And I think your followers will respond to that too.
I love that you touched on it's a bit more behind the scenes. And that's one of the things I want to ask you is, the brand and the feed is so important. Yeah. How do you feel about the importance of carrying that same feel and look and consistencies in your stories?
Yeah, personally, I mean, I definitely think my stories are less refined, but I am putting effort into, especially coming from an artist perspective, and I think you're probably similar from a design perspective, I am putting effort into the types I'm using and the colors. And I am personally trying to be consistent because, again, I want someone to land on my story and know, oh, that's Allie Dattilio, just because it's recognizable and branded. Now, the images I may be posting may not be quite as, edited or as bright. They might be a little bit more realistic and just in the moment, but I am being conscious of my design choices, even the GIFs I'm using, just making sure that it's reflective of me. And again, that consistency. So it's recognizable and you're just strengthening your brand recognition.
So I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, oh my gosh, 4 to 5 stories a day, and then, this many of that. Managing Instagram can almost feel like a full-time job. So tell me a little bit about how you balance how much you put into this versus how much studio time and other time that you're spending. Yeah,
to be honest, I probably spend too much time on Instagram, but you don't have to. So I actually I don't do many. You can schedule ahead. I do not schedule many posts. I like to be kind of more in the moment. It seems for me a little bit less of a burden. I think if I had to sit down and schedule out my posts, I would not enjoy it as much. But really, I try to at least batch work where I will sit down and devote 30 minutes to getting that post out there, following up and engaging in that time. and trying my best not to linger on it for too long. And even your stories, 4 to 5 stories, they're only at the max like 15 seconds long. So that you're looking at 2 minutes of content throughout the whole day. So it's really just putting in that effort of carving out that 30 minutes to devote to it. For me, it is my business, so it's a priority for me. I would say about 95% of all of my sales have come from people that have discovered me on Instagram. So it's important for my business to make it a priority. I think it's important for really anyone's business, but I understand that it can be also a time suck if you're not being intentional with how you're spending. Like if you're just spending your time scrolling through for no purpose, that's something you want to avoid. But if you're engaging, creating great content, I think it's time well spent.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Intentional posting.
Yeah.
Like really putting thought behind what it is you want to do, who you want to talk to, who you're engaging with. And actually, I wanted to come back around to hashtags real quick, a question, because I think a lot of people wonder, like, how do I even know what to hashtag? Do I make something up? Do I go find things? You can like search things. So how do you know how to choose intentional hashtags? So
here's a few tips. There's a website called displaypurposes.com. And if you search, it's a hashtag generator where you can just put in one topic and then it'll automatically generate 30 hashtags for you. So that's a great place to start. From there, though, you're going to want to tailor that down and customize it really more towards you because they're going to be pretty generic. For me, I also avoid any really broad hashtags. So my kind of sweet spot is a hashtag with around 100,000 posts. Beyond that, I think you get lost and it's just kind of, there's really no purpose to it. If it's too small, also, it's probably not something people are searching for. So around 100,000 posts. So again, you can start with that list from display purposes and then, tailor it down so it's a little bit more specific and targeted for you. Also looking at similar businesses, just doing a little market research and seeing what they're hashtagging is also kind of a great kind of hack, I would say, to do a little searching there too. Perfect. I'm sure everyone is typing that website in rapidly right now because it's a really great resource. Yeah. Any quick things like that can be helpful. And again, I love that you pointed out that this is your business, and you are treating the platform not just as a fun place to share pretty pictures, but there's a lot of business strategy in it. So, absolutely. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about your. How you have turned your business into a business via this platform. Yeah. So it kind of comes in two parts though, because Instagram was really where I grew up, where my business grew and where I became recognizable and building my brand. But then to get the sales, that's where I had to take it to the next level. And that's where I get into email marketing. So, I think of Instagram as that kind of initial handshake and that introduction, but because of that algorithm, nothing these days is guaranteed. So when I have my collection launches, I cannot just depend on Instagram to get those eyes. So I'm, using Instagram to tell that story and get people hooked, but I'm using my audience there and then leveraging that audience to build an email list. So that's really been key. Then when I have my collection launches, I send it out. I mean, obviously I'm going to announce it on Instagram, but I send it out to my email list because those are the people that have given me permission, that are interested in what I have to say and interested in what I'm selling. They've kind of taken it to that next level, saying, I'm not just a fan, but I want to buy. And so by sending that email out, that's really where I get all of my sales. I would say all of my money is coming from that email list. And again, they probably 9 times out of 10 found me on Instagram, but because of that algorithm, you just can't depend on it. So taking that to the next level, that has been really key in seeing my revenue increase, I would say. Instagram alone is just a little bit more passive. You're just really kind of hoping and praying people are going to find you. Of course, there's strategy behind it, but it's a little bit of luck. Whereas email marketing, you're just being a little bit more assertive and taking control of the situation. And you're, again, building from your Instagram audience, but being a little bit more focused with it. What would you say is the best way, or how do you gather the emails from Instagram? What does that transition and process look like? So just logistically, I use MailChimp. That's what I started on. It's a free platform for email lists. So that's where I start. But my biggest kind of tool is that my email list subscribers, I call them my collectors list, they get first access to my collections. So they will get a password that enters them into my collection website so they can buy first. And then at 2 hours later, that password's lifted and my pieces go public. Typically, most of my pieces will sell in those first 2 hours to that email list. So that's been my biggest pull is I'm sharing that on Instagram. Hey, releasing this collection on this date. If you want first dibs or to an early preview, sign up here. And then it's the link in the bio. I mean, I also love the swipe up feature because, in stories, that's a great way. But even if you don't have that swipe up feature, even in stories, I love the questions tab because you can change out the questions, say, hey, you want to add it on my email list? Type in your email, and then you just be manually adding them. Also with stories, that's one thing we didn't touch on, but the power of direct messaging. When you can get that conversation and that door open, I think that's also so important though, to kind of build that relationship. And people are way more likely to act on a direct message and follow through. And you can click that link. Links are clickable in a direct message, whereas they wouldn't be in a comment, to get them to kind of take that next step. So if it's the link to sign up to your newsletter, if it's the link to your website, they're just more likely to follow through and actually act on it if you have that one-on-one conversation with them in the DMs. So
that's a great point. I know sometimes I will follow people and almost instantly or within a few minutes, I'm getting, a direct message that's talking about their program or their system
right.
and things like that. So what are your thoughts and feelings on that? And do you take advantage of any of those types of features?
I do not. I mean, I think sometimes they have like the auto bots that are automatically doing
Yes.
it. Or
there are definitely Autobots.
Yeah. Personally, I think that's a little aggressive. But that's where, though, in my stories, I will be, or even in my feed, I'm posting questions, though, that's going to encourage them to kind of respond and DM me on their own. So I'm not feeling super pushy. And then, though, just responding to them and engaging and being a real person and being friendly and getting to kind of like me and trust me. It's all part of that process. So I would not personally kind of overtly like reach out to someone. Maybe I'd make a few exceptions if it was an interior designer that I had been kind of fangirling. If they followed me, I probably would be like, oh my gosh. But otherwise, if it was just, at this point, I would not, just anyone that follows me, I wouldn't take the time. But if they DM me, that's when then I'm like, oh, they're interested. I'm going to respond and engage and act on that. So
perfect. That's great. Yeah. I think a lot of it goes into the authenticity of your brand as well. So if that method works for a lot of people, obviously, because it's happening. But for most people, I know when I get that, I feel like I have a little bit of a different eye at Instagram naturally. But I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing there. I see that you've autobotted me and not interested. But I love the power of engaging with people and telling them, leading them basically down the sales funnel in the most authentic way. So I know that Instagram also has some rules. So the swipe up feature is beautiful, but you have to be at a certain level. So tell me a little bit about Instagram rules and things you've learned.
Oh, rules. Well, so the swipe up feature, I think you have to have 10,000 followers or be a verified account to have the swipe up feature. So that was a major milestone when I hit that. That was very exciting. So the swipe up feature is great. Other rules, I don't know. I mean, I think just being authentic, not spamming, not like this isn't so much a rule, but just one bad habit I see a lot of artists doing, just like hopping on and again, kind of that copy paste, like, hey, I'm an artist, follow me, or like, hey, check out my page. Again, it's about being authentic and taking the time to be a real person. I think those comments, when you're commenting on other like similar accounts, can be powerful, like because you could be potentially reaching their followers by just getting your name out there and introducing. But in that moment, you need to be authentic, or else they're not going to be interested in what you have to say. So I do have some little strategies where I'll like, hey, like I would love to paint this if it's like a really beautiful photograph or something, just to be like, oh, I'm an artist. I'm not blatantly saying like, hey, come check out my page, but I'm just putting it out there, who I am, what I'm about. So there's that. Yeah, don't be spammy. Don't, just be real, I would say. That's my biggest rule. Just be real, have fun with it. Don't overthink it too much. Like I know the aesthetics and being consistent are important, but if you're going to get burned out, then it's really not worth it. So it's trying to find that balance of what you really enjoy and care about. So
I love what you said earlier about how it actually deters you from posting if you had to sit down and plan out a whole like month's worth. I know a lot of content calendars, and this is what you write and pre-plan it. But I love that you gave permission that you don't have to plan it all in batches.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I definitely see the pros to planning if that works for you, but I think it's just recognizing your strengths and your weaknesses. And and what works best for your workflow and your inspiration. And I think a big part of that comes from being an artist though, and recognizing what it takes to kind of keep that creative fire going and being realistic about that and intentional with how I'm spending my time.
Yeah, I love that. It's really just tapping into what works for you, right? Because someone might really thrive and succeed on planning out a month, whereas someone else may plan and succeed off of planning the days. And there's no right or wrong. It's just the effort that's put into it. And again, I think coming back to the fact that this is a business tool, so it's not just putting up pretty pictures and saying hello to people, but there's a lot of strategy behind it.
Yeah.
So I know that you talked about Instagram leading to the email list, which ultimately leads to the sales process. Are there any other things that encompass or embody your sales and marketing and growing the business?
I mean, I think those are the two biggest parts for my collection launches. Those are kind of the two big key elements. But for my business, also, I have commissions that are custom pieces that are kind of my steady, I would say. So, my collections, I have my big launches every few months. But for my commissions, I can do about 3 or 4 paintings a month. That can be my really steady revenue that kind of keeps me floating also. So for those, for marketing purposes, I'm a little bit more assertive with that. Building these connections, networking with interior designers, and kind of really tapping into that ideal client and going after that a little bit more aggressively than I would with my collection launches where people are more coming to me. So for that, just building those connections, having really great customer service, and really over delivering what I'm promising them, making sure I have every deadline, I'm meeting every deadline, meeting every expectation. So setting kind of those expectations early on in the process, and then building those relationships so they'll keep coming back and keep buying or keep referring me. That's been really key. I also do prints. Again, so I'm a mom, I'm busy. So looking as far as in an artist perspective, potentially more passive income that's not going to require me to be painting quite as much. So prints have been important for that because it's just less time intensive. I've had my painting, I have my images. I do have an assistant that works just 1 day a week that helps with my print process, helps placing the orders and shipping them out. So marketing my prints, for that, I'm a little bit more strategic. Again, similar to my collection launches that are every 3 months, my print shop is only open 1 weekend a month. Again, kind of creating that anticipation and that scarcity. And again, if you want to print, now's the time to buy. It works well for my workflow also because all of my prints are made to order. I've very intentionally chosen not to, at this point at least, have a large inventory of prints. Just that'd be a huge investment, and I wouldn't want just that money sitting on a shelf. So instead, I order each print as they come in, just to save me that initial investment. But by placing 1 order a month, I also get bulk discounts. So there's a little strategy there. And then it just, the workflow streamline. I place order, then we ship, and then we're moving on to the next instead of just print orders trickling in here and there. So being strategic as far as kind of creating that demand and anticipation, really in all aspects of my business. So
I love this strategy so much because to me, it feels like you have created boundaries. So that, okay, there's 1 weekend a month or 1 week a month that's going to be dense or heavy. There's 4 weeks a year that are, dense and heavy. How did you struggle any, or how did you go through the process of what is enough? Because if things are selling out, well, then I'll make more. And then that leads into 2 weekends a month, and that leads into every week. And so how were you able to create, like, this is what I'm doing and this is enough, and that's what we're doing, and when they're gone, they're gone?
Yeah, well, for me, I mean, coming back to kind of my accounting days, I'm on spreadsheets and planning. So revenue wise, I plan out the year knowing what's the dollar amount I want to make, and then how do I get there, and breaking up my year accordingly. So I know my 4 collections, my print launches, and my commissions. If I hit my target, I'm going to get to that goal. I'm also very afraid of oversaturation. So just because my pieces are selling out right now, I don't feel comfortable just putting more and more out there because I think that's a really quick way to burn out as an artist and oversaturate your market. So instead, I'm kind of being disciplined, sticking to my collection releases, but then increasing my prices. So I'm not actually painting more. I'm just selling them for higher prices. So my revenue is increasing over time. But I don't have to actually put more work into it. And then my prints are a great option because as my prices for my originals rise, I still have that lower price point for people that may need a little bit more of an accessible price point. So I feel like I'm providing them both options there. So just being disciplined, because I think, yeah, people are really quick to just want to put more and more out there and try to just throw something in the wall and hope it sticks and hope it sells. But I think having that discipline and that strategy and seeing the long-term picture is going to be really key.
Oh, I love that so much. So knowing what your revenue goal is for the year and then building your year around that. Because you're so right. A lot of it's just, let's just throw the whole pot of spaghetti against the wall, including the pot, and whatever sticks, and whatever doesn't, then I'll try and figure out. But it's really about working smarter, not harder. And I think that's a lot of what Instagram is also, working smarter, not harder. What are some other things that have been, things that you've learned or tools or tricks from an Instagram standpoint that have contributed to your success?
Oh, tools and tricks. We talked about being consistent as far as how often you're showing up, just showing up, putting in the work, following through, not letting that frustration happen. Even now, the algorithm's always a struggle. There's a new thing that they've created called a creators account. Like you had your personal profile, a business profile, and now they have this creators account. So I've accepted that offer, joined that, but I'm still kind of figuring out the ins and outs of that. The pros are that the insights are better, you have better analytics and theoretically more kind of control and insight there. I kind of feel like maybe they're penalizing creators a little bit. Just there's always that fear that they're going to be similar to Facebook, wanting the whole pay to play mentality. And I hope for the best that they do not. I hope they don't fight, and I don't know. But so that's something I'm fighting against. But it's just being consistent and not letting that frustration eat away at you. Just keep putting in the work. With the algorithm too, the algorithm's always changing. I would say probably every 3 or 4 months, there's always a big shift. And in that shift, I'll see a little decrease in my engagement, or my follower growth may not be quite as high as it had been, but then it always kind of goes back to normal. So it's really just seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and carrying on with those strategies. I think at the core, those strategies are going to work no matter what, as far as being consistent, being engaging, being authentic. That's what's important. Any other tips or tricks? Do you have any other specific questions? As far as apps I like, I use the Afterlight app for editing my photos and I also use Color Story. But I just, again, to get those really bright whites, I think the difficulty sometimes with editing photos is when you boost that brightness or that exposure, it washes out the image. So Afterlight I like because it'll brighten the image, it'll brighten the whites without totally washing out my artwork, which is important. Oh, this is also important. Investing in a professional photo shoot. I think it's something a lot of artists or small business people kind of scare away from, maybe not really appreciate the value there. But as far as really elevating your feed and taking your account to the next level, as far as a professional standpoint, having professional images are really great. So I'll do just 1 or 2 photo shoots a year with a local photographer. I kind of bounce around and use different photographers, but from that photo shoot, it's $200. You can even offer, like from an artist perspective, I've traded for artwork, so I haven't even had to pay out of pocket. But from that, you can get, 20 to 40 images, sometimes even more, that you can use then for the whole year and sprinkle through and keep that, just building that library of content. I think having professional images can really take your work to the next level. Also speaking on content libraries, because I'm not in the studio every day, and actually even when I've been full-time artist for 2 years, but prior to that, I was working part-time, but I was still kind of building this Instagram and building this illusion a little bit that I was this full-time artist. So building a library of images when I am in the studio and working, taking a ton of images so that I can refer back to when I'm not actually painting, and just having that content there ready to go helps a lot. Also, so you're not pressured, oh my gosh, you haven't posted today, like let me take a quick photo that's not going to be that great. So again, being a little bit more intentional and strategic there. Just building that content library, professional images. Also, when you have those professional photo shoots, really thinking about how you're going to be using that content. So if it's on your website, you're probably going to want more horizontal images. On Instagram, vertical images do the best because they fill, if you're thinking about a smartphone, you want an image that's going to fill the majority of your screen for the biggest impact. So vertical images always do well. So really being thoughtful, even I have that conversation with that photographer saying like, it's going to be for Instagram, have some vertical headshots, keeping on brand though. So choosing a photographer that's going to be reflective of your brand, complimentary of your work, and really communicating with them what you want out of the shoot, especially if you're spending money on it. It's a big investment. You want to make the most out of it. And one other little tip for a photo shoot, this is minor, but something I learned the hard way is when you have a photo shoot, dress season neutral. Like, don't dress super wintry or super summery so that you can use those images year round. That's just something I learned the hard way. But just trying to be as evergreen as possible and make the most of it. It's important. Yeah.
That's smart. Yeah. It loses its steam in the middle of summer if you're wearing boots and scarves.
And even in a photo shoot too, you can do a couple wardrobe changes to really make the most of it so people don't get too burned out. Like, I've seen you wear that outfit 12 times now. So yeah, just mixing it up a little bit.
So when you're not so in the middle of the two professional photo shoots, when you're taking photos of yourself, do you have any tips on how to get great photos of yourself?
Sure.
When you don't have extra hands around? Yeah.
Well, iPhones are incredible tools. Get yourself a tripod. I have two different ones. I have one that's a freestanding that was maybe $30. And then I also have one that's a clip-on that was like $10 on Amazon that I can clip on my easel or on a chair. Have that tripod, set it up on self-timer mode. Also, if you have one of the newer iPhones, the portrait mode is incredible. Like, use the portrait mode and you will look like a professional photographer in no time. Also, iPhone has the time-lapse feature built right in, so you don't need a separate app for that. You just swipe over, put it on time-lapse mode, record, your work, and then it'll automatically edit it down to a time-lapse. So that makes it really, really easy and user-friendly. And then just kind of getting comfortable. Natural lighting, though, too, is key. Like, I never use overhead lighting. Even if it's overcast, I'd rather it be a little bit darker and then, edit it and brighten it up. But no one wants that kind of yellow overcast or the fluorescent look. So if that means for artists, sometimes I even recommend like taking your work outside to try to get better lights. But otherwise trying to move to a window. Again, being intentional and taking a little bit more time to get good lighting, that's key.
Wonderful. And then, so your success with your page as an artist has led you into a second business online, correct? Yeah. Studio Source, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct. Yes. So the Studio Source, I co-founded with a ceramicist out of North Carolina. Her name is Lindsay Emery, and her business is Sweet One Studio. She's major. She has a design line in anthropology. She sells porcelain pieces out of her studio also directly. And again, that kind of friendship came out of just building an authentic, natural relationship on Instagram years ago, just commenting on one another, supporting one another, asking questions. And we literally just became friends. I mean, we've been friends now probably for 5 or 6 years. We only met in person for the first time this past November when we were like coming up with this idea. But between her and I, we just saw this real void for resources very specific to artists, and even more specific, selling online. I think people have been doing kind of the gallery route or art fairs or art festivals, but now everything's shifting. And I think the potential to sell online is so infinite. Again, it's more profitable. You can be selling on your own time. You don't have to be spending your weekends in fairs or festivals. You don't have to be splitting commissions with galleries. So I think we just really wanted to build a hub of resources for artists selling online. So the Studio Source, it's a monthly subscription membership where people pay a monthly fee to have access to, we have courses. Our 4 courses are specifically Instagram for artists. So it's our Instagram strategy, websites for artists. So how to build your own website that's going to sell, email list marketing, how to grow an email list, the incentives to give your followers to want to join and sign up, what then to write in those email lists. And then all leading up, our 4th course is about releasing a collection, creating an event, and selling online. So that we have the 4 courses. We also do critiques, which we've kind of built this around the art school model. So we use critiques as our term for coaching, kind of hot seat calls where Lindsay and I will spend 30 minutes on one artist's individual business and kind of giving tailored advice to that member. And then we also do electives, which are these monthly kind of bonus mini courses, I would say, on kind of broader business topics. So shipping has been a big one for artists selling online. It's very unique. It's very important because you're going to be inevitably shipping out your pieces all across the world. So knowing the best strategies, the best cost-saving methods, how to ship your work safely. Also about pricing, commissions. So that's our elective model. So it's really courses, coaching, and then our community. So we have now 100 members, and we have a private Facebook members group where we can all cheer each other on, ask questions. It's also the direct line to Lindsay and I, so we can be in there answering questions pretty instantly when people have it. So it's just become this really great big family. It's been just such a rewarding experience. We didn't really know what we were getting into when we started this. We went beta in November, officially launched publicly in January. So we're a little over 7 months in. And it's been pretty great. Yeah.
That's phenomenal. I mean, it just blows my mind that because of a platform, Instagram,
yeah,
built a connection with another human that you never would have had contact with, which led to a relationship, which led to now another business with additional revenue streams that now you're able to help more people like you do what you're doing. I mean, that just blows my mind.
Yeah, that when you put it that way, it is pretty incredible. It's pretty special. Just the potential of Instagram, the potential of online sales, the potential of all of it is pretty incredible.
Wow. So last piece of advice as an entrepreneur, what have you learned, and what would you want to pass down to some other entrepreneurs that are working the hustle?
Oh, okay, that's a good question. I think just being strategic and being realistic. So, not going into things. I mean, I think the common thing is saying done is better than perfect. So, don't overthink it, but have a big plan in mind and see where your business is going a year out, 5 years out, and make sure that every move you're making is working towards that goal. And then also being realistic with what you're capable of. I think that's coming from a mom perspective. I've had to be very realistic as far as realizing I can't do it all on my own, knowing when to outsource, whether that's with daycare or with hiring an assistant, being realistic with my timelines and my goals. So setting big goals, but being realistic about them. And just knowing what's possible. I think that's really also where the Studio Source came out, because not only was it this void for this community, but also just knowing as a mom with twins on the way, that wasn't part of the plan initially. Like, I'm not going to be able to be painting as much. So what other options, where do I see my business going to still be bringing in revenue? So having that bigger picture and that plan in mind is really important. So
smart. Wow. Allie, where can everyone find you?
Sure. So on Instagram, I'm at Allie Dattilio. You'll have the link. My last name's a little complicated to spell, but Allie Dattilio. My website's also alliedattilio.com. For the Studio Source, it's thestudiosource.com. And then we also have an Instagram page, of course. Our Instagram account is at the Studio Source. And my email is also alliedattilio@gmail.com. So pretty consistent all across the board.
Awesome. All about that branding. That makes my heart happy. Well, thank you so much. I've watched you grow over the last few years, and I admire what you have done. Your stuff is amazing. Your paintings are beautiful. I admire your strategy and creativity plus math, which is such a beautiful combination. And seeing those two things come together is really amazing to watch. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, and thanks for having me. This was fun.
You got it. Absolutely. Guys, in the show notes, we have links so that you can pair up with Allie. Definitely follow her and the Studio Source and her paintings, and watch her journey through adding 2 little ones to her family.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah.
It'll always be fun. Absolutely. Follow us. Join us again on Thursday for our Power Back. We're going to dig into when is the right time to start something? And is there really a right time? Well, we're going to really start before we're ready, because is there a perfect time to do anything? Not really. Is there a perfect time to have twins? I'm going to go with probably not. But you know what? There's a few things that we can lean into to make these things work for us better. Until then, follow the Gutsy Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And for more Gutsy insight, follow me personally on Instagram at Laura Ora. See you next time.